The rain hammered the roof like fists on a barn door. I wiped the condensation from the window, peering into the black night, and there it was, her truck, swerving through the mud toward my fence line. Lightning cracked, illuminating the twisted metal of her bumper as it scraped the post. 6 years of hating her surged up, bitter as storm runoff. I'd built this ranch to be my fortress, and the one person I never wanted to see was now crashing through my defenses, literally. But the truck stalled, doors flying open in the wind. She stumbled out, clutching her right hand, soaked to the bone, face pale under the thunder's roar. Our ranches bordered each other, but tonight the storm trapped her here. I had no choice. The door burst inward as I reached it, bringing the cold lash of rain, and her, broken and needing shelter. Why now? Why her? My chest tightened, resentment clashing with something sharper, a pull I couldn't name. I grew up on this land. Dust in my boots before I could walk straight. Dad taught me to mend fences at dawn, his calloused hands guiding mine over wire and post. The ranch was my world, cows lowing in the valleys, wind whispering through the sagebrush. I dreamed big then. Expand the herd, ride the rodeo circuit, prove a girl could hold her own out here. Ambition burned like summer sun on parched earth. School was just a break from chores, a place to sharpen my edge. That's where I first saw Lena. It was the county fair, junior year, the air thick with hay and fried dough. She transferred in from some city edge, all sharp eyes and easy confidence, her family spread butting up against ours. The riding competition was the highlight, barrels set up in the arena, dust kicking under hooves. I was saddling my mare, Cinnamon, when she rode in on that sleek bay, handling it like she'd been born in the stirrups. We lined up, the crowd a blur. She edged me out by a heartbeat, her horse cutting the pattern clean while mine faltered on the turn. Close one, she said after, smirking as she dismounted, but her eyes said she'd planned it. From there, it snowballed. We shared ag classes, debating crop rotations or livestock feeds like it was war. I'd spend nights studying soil maps. She'd show up with some trick from her uncle, a vet who'd seen it all. One-upmanship became our rhythm. During harvest prep, our families crossed paths at the co-op. She'd accidentally tip a bale near my stack, forcing me to rebuild. I'd counter by blocking the shared irrigation ditch just enough to slow her fields. Small betrayals, each one a splinter under the skin. The resentment built slow, like thunderheads gathering. We weren't friends, too much fire between us. But there was a spark, unwanted, in the way she'd challenge me, push me to ride harder, think sharper. I told myself it was hate, pure and simple. Then came the key incident, senior year, the state fair qualifiers. I'd trained Cinnamon for months, her coat gleaming, my heart set on that scholarship rodeo spot. Lena knew it, everyone did. The night before, someone cut her reins, shallow, but enough to spook her during warm-ups. She bolted, throwing me hard into the dirt. Ribs bruised, pride shattered. I watched from the sidelines as Lena took the win. Her face blank, but eyes flicking my way. Rumors flew. Jealousy, sabotage. She never claimed it, but the timing screamed her name. Our families feuded over water rights anyway, and that sealed it. I confronted her behind the stables, voice shaking. You did this. Admit it. She just stared, chin lifted. Prove it. No apology, no denial. Just that wall. From then on, silence. We graduated, paths splitting. Me to community college for ranch management, her to some out-of-state program in equine science. But the scar lingered, a raw edge to every glance across the fence line when we both came back. Years passed. The rivalry simmered into adulthood, a low burn under the surface of our separate lives. I'd hear her truck rumble by, catch glimpses of her working her acres. Out here, you can't escape your history. It clings like burrs to your genes. And then the storm brewed, pulling it all to a head. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was a hardened boundary, turning our shared valley into a silent 6-year battlefield. My day started before the roosters stirred, and pull-on boots stiff with yesterday's mud, the leather creaking like old bones. Coffee steamed in a tin mug on the porch rail, black and scalding, while the valley woke in grays and golds. The ranch demanded motion, fences first, always. I'd load the truck with wire and posts, driving the ruts to where the line sagged under wind or wandering stock. Hammer in hand, I'd drive stakes deep, the thud echoing back from the hills. Sweat beaded under my hat, mixing with dust into tracks down my neck. Livestock came next. The herd grazed, scattered across the lower pastures, their low calls pulling me from one chore to the next. I'd check the calves, ears flicking at my approach, then move to the barn for feed. Shoveling grain, the metallic scrape of the bucket against concrete filled the air. Mornings blurred into checks on water troughs, clearing debris from the creek, hands raw from the pull of weeds rooted stubborn as memory. Afternoons meant riding the fences on horseback, the mare's hooves clipping steady, wind carrying the scent of sage and warm hide. Solitude wrapped around me like fog off the river, thick and unbroken. That rivalry with Lena had carved this life sharp. 6 years of it, starting back in high school, had taught me to trust no one but the land. Her wins, her jabs, they'd push me to build walls higher than any fence. Independence wasn't chosen. It was forged in the fire of those losses, the way she'd edge me out every time. Now, it kept me going solo. No crew to split the load, no partner to share the ache in my back after hauling hay. I'd tell myself it was strength, this hardening. But at night, staring at the ceiling beams, doubt crept in. Had I let her shape me too much, turn resentment into a cage? The isolation sank deep, sensory as the earth underfoot. Dawn light slanted through the kitchen window, catching motes in the air like distant stars. Quiet routines marked time. The sizzle of eggs in the skillet, the creak of floorboards under my weight. Out in the fields, wind sighed through the grass, a constant hush broken only by a hawk's cry or the distant rumble of thunder. I'd pause mid-stride, breath fogging in the chill, feeling the world's vastness press in. No voices but my own, muttering curses at a stubborn gate. The ranch house, small and weathered, held echoes of Dad's absence, his chair empty, tools lined neat on the wall. It was peace, or so I claimed. But the silence had edges, sharp as barbed wire. Under it all, loneliness hid, masked as self-reliance. I'd catch myself scanning the horizon, half expecting a truck or a figure on horseback. Not hers, I'd insist, shaking it off. But the pull lingered, a hollow in the chest when dusk fell and lights stayed off across the fence. Out here, folks kept to themselves, but the ache built slow. Dates in town? Rare and fleeting. Women who didn't understand the calluses or the dawn starts. I was fine alone, I repeated like a mantra, mending a tear in my glove. Fine meant surviving, not thriving. The rivalry had sealed that off, turning potential into isolation. Was it worth it? The question hung, unanswered, like smoke from the chimney. Vulnerability showed in small cracks that day. A fence post splintered under the hammer, wood giving way unexpected. I cursed, fingers sliced open on the edge, blood welling quick, staining the dirt. It throbbed as I wrapped it in a rag, the sting a reminder. The land could turn on you fast. So could people. I bandaged it tight, but the weakness lingered, mirroring the soft spot I'd buried deep. Patching that post took longer, sun climbing higher, sweat stinging the cut. The storm hit then, sudden as a spooked horse. Clouds boiled over the ridge, wind whipping dust into my eyes. I secured the barn doors, but lightning forked close, thunder shaking the ground. Rain came in sheets, turning paths to rivers. Trapped inside, I watched from the window, heart picking up. That's when headlights pierced the downpour, her truck, lurching through the mire. The encounter forced itself on me, shattering the quiet I'd clung to. We both came back to these valleys after college, drawn by the pull of dirt and sky. I took over Dad's ranch when his health faded, the weight of it settling on my shoulders like a worn saddle. Lena inherited her family's place next door, the old spread with its sagging barns and stubborn creek. Our properties kissed at the edges, fences running parallel like old wounds. Water rights were the first flashpoint. The shared stream fed both herds, but summers turned it thin. She'd dam it upstream just enough to skim more for her pastures, leaving mine parched. I'd retaliate by clearing brush that diverted flow my way. No words exchanged, just glares across the wire, hammers pausing mid-swing. Community events sharpened the blade. The annual cattle auction in town became our battlefield. I'd bid sharp on yearlings, eyes locked on hers as she countered, driving prices up until one of us backed off. Last spring, during the branding roundup, her crew misplaced my branding iron in the fire pit, forcing me to use a spare that smoked wrong. I found it later, cooled and mocking. In return, I tipped off the co-op about her late fence payment, delaying her feed delivery by a day. Subtle sabotages, the kind that fester without proof. Folks whispered, but out here, grudges are private as a coyote's kill. The isolation crept in deeper with each year. My days blurred into solitude. Me against the land, anger a constant companion. I'd wake before light, coffee black and bitter, staring at the fence line where her lights flickered at dusk. Unresolved, it bottled up inside, turning to lead in my gut. Nights, I'd lie awake, the wind rattling the shutters like unanswered questions. Why her? Why did that high school shadow still choke me? Self-reliance hardened me further, a shell against the quiet. Friends drifted, dating felt like inviting weakness. The ranch demanded everything, and I gave it, fists clenched around the reins. But glimpses of her life pierced the armor, unwanted. Driving the truck past her gate, I'd catch her silhouette in the corral, breaking a colt with that same steady hand from school. Once, rain-slicked, she wrestled the gate alone, mud caking her jeans, determination etched in her stance. It stirred something. Curiosity, sharp as barbed wire. Was she as alone as me? Her truck parked crooked after long days, a lone horse nickering in the empty yard. I'd shake it off, throttle the engine louder. Yet it lingered, a crack in the resentment. Physical labor became my metaphor for it all. Mending fences felt like patching my own scars, hammer strikes echoing the thud of bottled rage. Each post set firm, wire pulled taut, mirroring the tension coiled in my chest. Hauling hay bales was sweat-soaked release, muscles burning like unspoken words. But at dusk, rubbing salve into a horse's flank, the gentleness mocked my hardness. Emotions trapped, they twisted like roots under frost, unseen but cracking the ground. The storm started as a murmur on the horizon, clouds piling like grudges. I ignored it at first, focused on the daily grind. But the air thickened, wind tugging at the eaves. That's when her truck appeared, that night, headlights cutting the gathering dark. The routine shattered, pulling her into my world, right as the storm pinned us both in place. The knock came faint at first, then pounding, fist against wood muffled by the storm. I hesitated, resentment flaring hot in my gut. 6 years of this. Why her? Crashing into my night like she owned the dark. But she was hurt. I could see it in the way she leaned against the post, body hunched against the wind. Cursing under my breath, I yanked the door open. Rain blasted in, soaking my shirt front, and there she was, dripping, shivering, eyes locking on mine with that old defiance mixed with something raw. "Lena," I said, voice flat. She didn't answer, just pushed past me into the warmth, water pooling at her boots. "Road washed out," she muttered through chattering teeth, collapsing onto a chair at the table. Her jacket hung heavy, shedding rivulets onto the floorboards. Up close, the injury screamed, her hands swollen, knuckles bruised purple, fingers bent wrong at the middle one. Fell trying to secure the gate. Truck slid, hit the post. "Think it's broken." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she bit it back, jaw tight. I shut the door against the howl, the room suddenly too small with her in it. Thunder echoed my pulse, resentment surging like the creek outside. Shelter her? Here, where every corner held echoes of our fights? But the dock was miles off, town cut off by the flood. No choice. Hospitality ran deeper than grudges out here. "Fine," I said, grabbing towels from the linen closet, tossing one her way. "Dry off. I'll get the first aid kit." She nodded, peeling off her jacket with her good hand, wincing as the motion jarred her arm. The kitchen filled with the scent of wet wool and the metallic tang of blood. A cut across her palm, shallow, but weeping. I rummaged in the cabinet, pulling out bandages, antiseptic, splints from the horse kit. Practicality overrode the knot in my chest. Injuries didn't wait for feuds. Let me see it. She extended her arm slow, palm up, the swelling distorting the lines I remembered from school. Strong, capable hands that had always bested mine. The assessment was chaos amid the calm. Rain lashed the pains like accusations, lightning popping bright enough to bleach her skin. I probed gentle, feeling the give of bone under flesh. Definitely fractured, maybe the wrist, too. She hissed through her teeth, body tensing, but held still. Bad break, I told her, dabbing the cut clean. The antiseptic stung. She jerked once, eyes watering, but met my gaze steady. Proximity hit then, sharp as the thunder, her knee brushing mine under the table, breath warm in the close air. The house, spare as it was, felt crowded. Her coat slung over a chair, boots tracking mud, the lantern light hollowing her cheeks. 6 years of distance, and now this. Her vulnerability inches away, stirring the old fire with something new, unwelcome. Guilt flickered as I worked, wrapping gauze tight. She'd come to me, no one else. The storm forcing trust where none existed. Why not call ahead? I asked, voice rougher than intended. She shrugged, pain etching lines around her mouth. Phone line's down. Figured you'd be the closest dry spot. Dry spot. Like we were neighbors, not enemies. The word hung, tension coiling thicker than the storm clouds. I fashioned a splint from a board and tape, her arm rigid in my grip, skin cool against my calluses. Every touch sparked memory, high school spars, the heat of competition. Now it was care, reluctant, pulling at threads I'd long buried. Night fell heavy, the storm unrelenting. Wind moaning through the eaves like a warning. I pointed her to the spare room, sheets aired but dusty from disuse. Rest. We'll see the dock at first light if it clears. She nodded, standing slow, the splint awkward on her arm. As she shuffled down the hall, I watched her go, the door clicking shut behind. Resistance burned. Why her? Why now? But concern lingered, a crack in the wall, as the rain drummed on. Care would begin despite it, the night stretching long with unspoken weight. Road washed out, she muttered through chattering teeth, collapsing onto a chair at the table. Her jacket hung heavy, shedding rivulets onto the floorboards. Up close, the injury screamed, her hands swollen, knuckles bruised purple, fingers bent wrong at the middle one. Fell trying to secure the gate. Truck slid, hit the post. Think it's broken. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she bit it back, jaw tight. I shut the door against the howl, the room suddenly too small with her in it. Thunder echoed my pulse, resentment surging like the creek outside. Shelter her? Here, where every corner held echoes of our fights? But the dock was miles off, town cut off by the flood. No choice. Hospitality ran deeper than grudges out here. Fine, I said, grabbing towels from the linen closet, tossing one her way. Dry off. I'll get the first aid kit. She nodded, peeling off her jacket with her good hand, wincing as the motion jarred her arm. The kitchen filled with the scent of wet wool and the metallic tang of blood. A cut across her palm, shallow but weeping. I rummaged in the cabinet, pulling out bandages, antiseptic, splints from the horse kit. Practicality overrode the knot in my chest. Injuries didn't wait for feuds. Let me see it. She extended her arm slow, palm up, the swelling distorting the lines I remembered from school. Strong, capable hands that had always bested mine. The assessment was chaos amid the calm. Rain lashed the panes like accusations, lightning popping bright enough to bleach her skin. I probed gentle, feeling the give of bone under flesh, definitely fractured, maybe the wrist, too. She hissed through her teeth, body tensing, but held still. Bad break, I told her, dabbing the cut clean. The antiseptic stung. She jerked once, eyes watering, but met my gaze steady. Proximity hit then, sharp as the thunder. Her knee brushing mine under the table, breath warm in the close air. The house, spare as it was, felt crowded. Her coat slung over a chair, boots tracking mud, the lantern light hollowing her cheeks. 6 years of distance, and now this. Her vulnerability inches away, stirring the old fire with something new, unwelcome. Guilt flickered as I worked, wrapping gauze tight. She'd come to me, no one else. The storm forcing trust where none existed. "Why not call ahead?" I asked, voice rougher than intended. She shrugged, pain etching lines around her mouth. "Phone line's down. Figured you'd be the closest dry spot." Dry spot. Like we were neighbors, not enemies. The word hung, tension coiling thicker than the storm clouds. I fashioned a splint from a board and tape, her arm rigid in my grip, skin cool against my calluses. Every touch sparked memory, high school spars, the heat of competition. Now it was care, reluctant, pulling at threads I'd long buried. Night fell heavy, the storm unrelenting, wind moaning through the eaves like a warning. I pointed her to the spare room, sheets aired but dusty from disuse. "Rest. We'll see the dock at first light if it clears." She nodded, standing slow, the splint awkward on her arm. As she shuffled down the hall, I watched her go, the door clicking shut behind. Resistance burned. Why her? Why now? But concern lingered, a crack in the wall, as the rain drummed on. Care would begin despite it, the night stretching long with unspoken weight. I stood in the kitchen after she'd gone, staring at the mud-smeared floor. The storm howled on, rain sluicing down the panes like tears I wouldn't shed. Helping her went against every knot I'd tied tight over 6 years. Lena, my shadow from high school, the one who'd always taken more than her share. Why open the door to that again? Her pain was real, swollen hand cradled like a wounded bird. But resentment clawed back. I could have left her truck there, pointed her to the barn. Out here, folks managed alone. Yet I'd pulled her in, bandaged her up. Foolish, that pull in my gut, mixing anger with something softer, unbidden. The house settled into an uneasy quiet, broken only by the wind's low moan. I wiped the table clean, movements sharp, trying to scrub away the feel of her skin under my fingers. The splint I'd made was crude, board from the tool shelf, tape stretched taut, but it held her wrist steady. Earlier, as I wrapped it, her breath had hitched, close enough to warm my cheek. I'd pulled back quick, heart thudding like a hammer on fresh nail. Proximity like that stirred the old fire, resentments bubbling up hot. Remember the fair? Her smirk after the win, while I nursed bruises. Now she sat vulnerable in my spare room, and it twisted something deep. Guilt seeped in slow, like water through cracked earth. Her face in the lantern light, pale, lines etched from pain, mirrored the girl I'd known, fierce but fraying. She'd come to me, no one else, storm or not. What if I'd turned her away? The doc's office flooded out, roads impassable. Her hand throbbed visible, fingers twitching when she thought I wasn't looking. I busied myself with supper, slicing potatoes one-handed, knife biting wood. But my mind circled back. Helping felt like surrender, unraveling the walls I'd built post-high school. Independence was my armor, now it chafed. Night deepened, the clock ticking past 10. Thunder rumbled distant, but the air hung thick inside. I couldn't sleep, boots off but restless, pacing the hall. Her door cracked open when I passed, light spilling faint from the bedside lamp. She shifted on the cot, wincing, the splint catching moonlight. "Can't get comfortable," she muttered, voice rough from the cold. I paused, frame filling the doorway. "Need more ice?" The words came grudging, but I fetched a rag from the freezer anyway, wrapping it cold against the pack. She took it with her good hand, our fingers brushing, cool cloth, warm skin. The touch lingered a beat too long, sparking memory. High school echoes in that graze, the way we'd bump elbows in ag class, competition electric. Now it hummed different, stirring buried heat. I sat on the bed's edge, space between us narrow as a fence gap. Awkward silence fell first, filled with the house's creaks. "How'd it really happen?" I asked, breaking it. She flexed her good fingers, rag pressed to the swell. "Gate swung wild in the wind. Grabbed it wrong. Truck pinned my hand against the post. Snapped like dry branch." Her eyes met mine, unflinching. But pain shadowed them. "We talk then," halting, words scraping like boots on gravel. "Remember the qualifiers?" I said, voice low. She nodded, slow. "Yeah, the reins. I didn't cut them." Denial again, same as back then. Resentment flared. Why lie now? But her gaze held steady. No smirk, just weariness. "Swear it. Someone else. Maybe a jealous kid. I wanted the win fair." The admission hung, cracking old certainties. Guilt twisted sharper. Had I pinned it on her too quick? 6 years wasted on shadows. Physical closeness amplified it all. The room smelled of her. Wet earth, faint soap from my towel. Her knee bumped mine as she adjusted the ice, sending a jolt up my thigh. I shifted away, but the bed was small, her presence filling it. Buried resentments surfaced in waves. The irrigation fights, her bids outpacing mine at auction. Yet here, tending her, they mingled with concern. Her pain was visible, sweat beading her brow, breaths shallow. "It hurts bad," she admitted, voice cracking. I pressed the rag firmer, my hand over hers steadying. The contact burned, not just cold, but alive, pulling at threads of desire I'd ignored since school. We talked more, echoes pulling us back. "You always pushed harder after that," she said, eyes on the wall. "Made me better, too. But I hated how it hurt you." Raw, unexpected. My chest tightened. Forgiveness? No, not yet. But guilt bloomed full, her vulnerability mirroring my own hidden cracks. I'd hardened against her, but isolation had cost us both. The storm eased outside, rain softening to patter. "Get some rest," I said, standing abrupt, the brush of my leg against hers lingering. Morning light filtered gray through the curtains. Her hand needed checking, but chores waited. Cows to feed, paths to clear. Resistance lingered, a knot in my shoulders, but care had started, reluctant threads weaving. Shared work would reveal more, whether I wanted it or not. The storm lingered into the next day, skies heavy, but the rain easing to a drizzle that muddied the paths. I woke to the scent of damp earth seeping through the cracks, coffee brewing slow on the wood stove. Lena stirred in the spare room, her footsteps uneven on the floorboards. Chores couldn't wait. The herd would mill restless without feed, fences sagging under the weight of branches torn loose. "You staying put?" I asked, pulling on my jacket, voice edged with the old caution. She appeared in the doorway, splint awkward on her arm, face drawn but determined. "Not a chance. One hand's better than none." Her eyes met mine, a challenge wrapped in necessity. I nodded, reluctant. The ranch demanded hands, and with the road still flooded, help from town was a ghost. We'd adapt, or the work would bury us both. We started in the barn, air thick with the musk of hay and horse sweat. I forked bales from the loft, dust motes swirling in the gray light filtering through slats. Lena followed with her good arm, dragging the smaller loads to the troughs, her movements clipped to avoid jarring the splint. "Pass the bucket," I said, reaching for grain. Our fingers brushed, hers cool and tentative, mine rough from the pitchfork. The contact sparked quick, like flint on steel, sending a warmth up my arm that had nothing to do with the work. I pulled back fast, focusing on the scatter of feed, but the feel lingered, a ghost touch amid the clatter of hooves. She didn't comment, just scooped with her left, spilling a little, cursing under her breath. Teamwork, forced and fumbling, but it moved the load. Out in the pastures, the ground sucked at our boots, mud caking the hems of our jeans. The calves pressed close, lowing for milk, their warm breaths fogging the chill. Normally, I'd wrestle the pails solo, but with her there, we split it. Me filling, her steadying the gates one-handed. Wind tugged at the wire, rattling like old bones, and a post leaned drunken from the storm's push. "Hold this," I muttered, wedging the hammer under my elbow to drive a stake. She braced the wood with her good shoulder, body close enough that I caught the faint scent of her skin, clean under the rain's residue. Our sides touched, brief pressure through damp flannel, and something shifted in my chest. A flicker of reliance, unwanted but real. The post sank true, and for a moment we stood there, breaths sinking with the wind's hush. Trust budded tentative, like green shoots after flood. Afternoons blurred into adapted rhythms. Hauling water from the creek meant her trailing with the empty cans, me sloshing full ones back, muscles burning under the strain. She'd prop the splint on her knee, watching me work, then rise to help sort tools, her left hand sorting nails into buckets, fingers nimble despite the ache. Once, reaching for the same rag to wipe sweat, our hands overlapped fully, palm to palm, her pulse thudding faint against mine. Heat bloomed there, slow and insistent, stirring the buried pull from high school days. I met her gaze, saw the flicker mirror my own. Curiosity edged with heat. We broke apart, words unspoken, but the air thickened, charged like the sky before thunder. Evenings came early, the sun dipping behind ridges painted orange and bruised purple. I'd build a fire in the hearth, logs crackling to life, flames dancing shadows across the rough-hewn walls. Lena settled on the rug, splint propped on a cushion, while I stirred stew in the iron pot. Potatoes and venison from last fall's hunt, steam rising thick with herbs. The warmth pushed back the damp, but the quiet invited words, spilling slow at first. "Tell me about after school," she said one night, firelight hollowing her cheeks. I poked the embers, sparks rising like confessions. Took the ranch when Dad's lungs gave out. Learned to hate needing anyone. My voice dropped low, the admission heavy. She nodded, eyes on the flames. I went to equine school, thought it'd make me untouchable. Came back to empty barns, folks gone. Pushed harder to prove. Stories flowed then, exchanged like passes in a relay. She spoke of city edges, the pull of wide skies calling her home. Regrets threading her words. Nights alone, wondering if the fences she'd built kept out more than coyotes. I shared fragments. The ache of mending alone. How her shadow from the fair had hardened me, turned ambition to armor. "That rains thing," I said finally, voice rough as gravel. "It broke more than my ride." She leaned forward, fire popping soft. "I know. I saw you in the dirt, wanted to help, but pride choked me. Regret it every time I see a barrel run." Her admission hung, raw, cracking the ice between us. Past hurts surfaced, not accusations, but truths, shared in the fire's glow. Forgiveness edged in, tentative as a foal's first stand. Quiet care wove through it all. I'd rewrap her splint at dusk, fingers gentle on the swelling, tracing the lines of her palm without meaning to. Her breath would catch, eyes darkening, and desire flickered, subtle, like heat from embers, warming the space where resentment once burned. One evening, as I adjusted the tape, her good hand covered mine, holding it there. Skin to skin, pulse to pulse, the touch lingered, electric in the still air. "Thanks," she whispered, voice low, pulling me into depths I'd avoided. I didn't pull away, the moment stretching, bodies close in the firelight. Attraction stirred deep, a current under the surface, turning care to something sharper, alive. The storm cleared by week's end, skies washing blue, but emotions coiled tighter. Sun slanted through the windows, highlighting dust in the air, but the house felt changed. Full of her presence, the brush of hands in work, words by fire. Trust built slow, but desire intensified, pulling us toward the edge. The past confronted, regrets aired, left us raw, ready for what simmered beneath. The sun hung low that evening, painting the kitchen in long shadows that stretched like fingers across the scarred oak table. We'd spent the day mending the last of the storm-torn fences, her one-handed help turning what should have been solitary work into something shared, charged. Dust clung to our skin, the scent of sweat and sun-baked earth filling the small space. I poured coffee into chipped mugs, steam rising thick, the brew bitter on my tongue. Lena sat across from me, splint propped on the table's edge, her good hand tracing the wood grain, slow, deliberate. Silence had built all afternoon, heavy as the air before a squall, pressing us toward the words we'd skirted for days. It broke in the quiet, my voice cutting sharp. That day at the qualifiers, the rains. You say it wasn't you, but it felt like every fight we'd had wrapped into one cut. The words hung, raw, pulling the old grievance to the surface like a thorn worked free from deep flesh. She looked up, eyes steady, the fire from high school flickering back, defiant but softened now by the weeks of proximity, the brush of hands in the corral. It wasn't, she said, voice low, unflinching. But I let you think it. Never corrected the whispers. Pride. Or fear. Didn't want to look weak admitting I cared what you thought. Her admission landed like rain on dry ground, soaking in slow. 6 years of blame, built on assumptions, cracked under the weight. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, the wood cool under my palms. Cared? You spent years edging me out. Auctions, water rights, every damn thing. Made me hard alone out here. Resentment surged, hot as forge coals, but laced now with the ache of what it had cost. The kitchen felt smaller, her presence filling it, breath sinking with mine in the still air. She shifted, wincing as the motion tugged her hand, but her gaze held. I pushed because you were the only one who pushed back. Made me feel alive, not just surviving this land. But after the fair, seeing you thrown, I froze. Wanted to help, but the wall was up. Our family's feud, the competition, it swallowed us. Raw truth spilled, her voice cracking on the edges, mirroring the fracture in my chest. Forgiveness unfolded not in grand gestures, but in these admissions, peeling back layers like bark from a wind-scarred tree. The tension shifted then, thickening into something intimate, electric. Sun dipped lower, gilding her face, cheekbones sharp, lips parted on an unsaid breath. I reached across, hesitant, my fingers brushing her good hand first, then tracing to the splint. This, I murmured, voice rough. You coming here, breaking open the quiet. It's like the storm washed something clean. Her skin warmed under my touch, pulse thudding faint through the gauze, a rhythm that echoed my own. She didn't pull away, eyes darkening, pulling me in. I've watched you across the fence for years, she confessed, words soft, vulnerable. Hated how it hurt, but couldn't stop. The rivalry hid it, this pull, wanting more than to win. Revelation hung between us, intimate as shared breath, the romantic undercurrent peaking in that gaze, bodies leaning close over the table's divide. Tenderness bloomed with the touch, my thumb circling gentle over the swell of her injured hand, feeling the heat of healing bone beneath. It was a physical emblem, this care, once forced by the storm, now chosen, fingers mapping the lines of pain and strength I'd envied since school. She exhaled slow, good hand covering mine, holding it there, the contact sending sparks up my arm, deep into my core. Let me, I whispered, unwrapping the tape slow, exposing the bruised skin to the fading light. Her breath hitched, body tensing, then softening. Trust in the arch of her neck, the way her eyes fluttered half shut. The moment stretched, rural stillness wrapping us, wind sighing faint through the eaves, the distant low of cattle like a lullaby. Desire stirred raw, unspoken, in the space where resentment had died. Catharsis released in waves, the long-held rivalry uncoiling like a rope finally slack. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and unbidden, as the weight lifted. 6 years of silence, of glares across the wire, dissolving in this touch. I blamed you for everything, I admitted, voice breaking. Kept me from seeing you, really seeing. She squeezed my hand, gentle despite the ache. And I let it. Feared this, what it means to let go. Laughter bubbled low, shared and shaky, cutting the tension like sunlight through clouds. The kitchen held us, simple walls witnessing the shift, from enemies forged in high school dust to this, women stripped bare by time and storm. Emotions flooded free, a release that left me hollowed, then full, the land outside mirroring the quiet vastness within. Mutual desire acknowledged itself in the hush, her thumb stroking my knuckle, eyes locking with a heat that burned slow, steady. Stay, I said, the word a bridge over the old chasm. She nodded, leaning across the table, foreheads touching, brief, breath mingling warm. The pull was undeniable now, bodies aware, hearts sinking in the rural stillness, where isolation had once ruled. No grand declarations, just this. Hands linked, the injured one cradled safe, desire flickering like embers ready to flame. New dawn signaled resolution as night fell, stars pricking the cleared sky outside. We'd face it together. The rivalry's ghost laid to rest. Emotions raw but mended, pulling us toward what came next. Dawn broke clear the next morning, light spilling gold over the ridge, chasing the last shadows from the yard. I rose early, the house quiet except for the faint creak of floorboards under my steps. Lena slept still, her breathing even through the spare room door, the splint a dark shape on the pillow. Practicality pulled me out first. Her hand needed real care, not just my makeshift wraps. I phoned the doc in town once the lines cleared, his gravel voice confirming a break, clean but needing a cast. Bring her in today, he said, and watch for swelling. I packed the truck with clean rags and her damp jacket, the engine rumbling to life like a promise. She woke to the sound, appearing rumpled, eyes soft with sleep. Ready? I asked, handing her coffee, steam curling between us. She nodded, good hand wrapping around the mug, the simple act feeling like a step across the old divide. The drive to town bumped over washed-out ruts, her splint braced on the dash, fingers twitching now and then. At the clinic, the doc worked quick. X-rays glowing on the screen, confirming the fracture mid-hand, no worse than feared. He set it in plaster, white and unyielding, wrapping it snug from wrist to knuckles. 4 weeks easy, he told her, then glanced my way. She's got good help. Lena met my eyes, a small smile tugging her lips, the weight of his words settling warm in my chest. Back home, we stopped at the co-op for supplies. Feed sacks and wire, her good arm loading what she could, our shoulders brushing in the narrow aisle. It was mundane, but the ease of it stirred something new. Partnership. Tentative, born from necessity, but rooted deeper now. Mending fences took on new rhythm that week. The storm had torn gaps wide along the shared line, posts splintered like old grudges. We'd ride out together, her on the spare mare, me leading with tools in the truck bed. She'd point out weak spots with her casted hand, voice steady, while I drove stakes deep, hammer strikes sinking with her directions. There, by the creek, she'd say, and I'd nod, pulling wire taut between us. Her one-handed help meant tying knots slow, but she learned my ways, looping the line just so, testing the give. Sweat beaded our skin under the climbing sun, dust kicking up as hooves turned earth. One afternoon, wrestling a leaning post straight, her good hand gripped mine for leverage, muscles straining together. The wood righted with a groan, and we stepped back, breaths heavy, the fence whole again. It mirrored us, practical steps healing the breaks, not just bone, but the years of silence. Ranch life shifted seamless into us. Mornings meant shared coffee on the porch, mugs clinking as we planned the day, calves to check, hay to haul. She'd adapt chores, sorting tools left-handed while I forked bales, our paths crossing in the barn with nods and quiet words. Evenings by the fire turned routine. Stew simmering, her cast propped near the warmth, stories flowing easy now. The isolation that once choked me eased, filled with her presence. The low chuckle at a coyote's howl, the brush of her shoulder as we passed in the hall. From enemies, forged in high school dust and adult spars, to this, lovers emerging slow, catharsis in every shared glance. The rivalry's fire had banked to embers, warming instead of burning, desire woven into the daily grind. I'd catch her watching me mend a saddle, eyes dark with that pull, and later, in the quiet house, our hands would find each other, touches lingering longer, mapping new ground. Hope lingered amid the challenges, stubborn as sagebrush. Rural life didn't bend easy. Droughts loomed, markets fluctuated, the land demanding endless. Her place next door waited, fences no longer barriers but bridges. We'd talk of merging herds, sharing the creek fare, building something lasting against the wind. But doubts whispered too. What if the old scars pulled us apart? Yet in her steady gaze, the way she'd lean into my side at dusk, it felt possible. Resilience. We'd both learned it hard. Now, together, it promised more. The final image etched at sunset one evening. Us on the hill overlooking the valley, horses grazing below, the horizon stretching wide under a sky bruised purple and gold. Her casted hand rested in mine, fingers laced despite the bulk. The shared view, a quiet vow. Out here, challenges waited, but so did this. Us. Intertwined against the vastness. Hands intertwined at dawn, her cast warm against my palm. We stepped into the light together, the ranch waking around us. Out here, where the land holds grudges as tight as roots in rocky soil, turning rivals to lovers feels like coaxing water from stone. But that's the quiet truth of it. Storms come, break what's brittle, and leave room for something stronger to grow. If you've ever felt that shift, from resentment's cold grip to the warmth of unexpected care, know it's possible. The isolation of rural life can carve you deep, but connection, when it finds you, fills the hollows. Share your own stories below. Those rivalries that bloomed into love, the hidden desires in conservative corners. What pulled you through the tension? Your words might light the way for someone else feeling that pull. And if these tales of Sapphic resilience resonate, subscribe for more. Stories of women finding home in each other, amid the dust and wide skies. Hit that bell. The next one might be the one that speaks to you.